Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well today. Oh, God. You know, as I think back to those two protests I attended on the 1st of June and the 27th of July, I actually was trying my damnedest to find that song that really inspired me, by the wonderful Kelly Lamb at the protest, but obviously was done by a different artist, obviously when it was originally made. Read all about it. God, powerful song. Actually brought me to tears at work when I was on my lunch break. But of course you didn't come here to find out about my inspiration to certain music artists. No, I want to talk more about some of the left-wingers. In particular, has anybody heard of, I always want to say Ricky Gervais, but no, it's Ricky Jones. I wouldn't blame you if you hadn't heard of him, because I hadn't heard of him until today. He is a Labour MP who has actively called and said, caught on camera, that he wanted to slit the throats of people on the far right. All this, and guess who's standing with them? Amnesty UK. These are the people that are in the left-wing protests. But apparently we're supposed to believe that Nigel Farage, as much as I loathe him right now for the slander he did for Tommy Robinson, but Nigel Farage, apparently, we're supposed to believe he and Tommy Robinson are the ones instigating the riots. Well, this will be the third bloody time I'm mentioning this now, maybe even the fourth. But Tommy Robinson has been one of the main advocates who has been calling for peace. He has called for far more peaceful resolution than any politician in those houses of treachery. I mean Parliament. Or maybe I was right first time. Have we seen the mainstream media call for peace? No. The media and that NPC Prime Minister, Keir the Traitor Starmer, have actively been stoking the flames. The flames, of course, of effectively bringing in civil war. But before I go any further on that, and really lose my rag, I'm probably going to need a new top of the head at the end of this, because it's going to blow. Anyway, the other thing I want to talk about is Paul Thorpe. Because apparently, Paul Thorpe's been threatened that he's going to have his YouTube videos taken down, or he's being threatened with his life, or whatever. Now, I don't know if this is 100% true, but what I do know is that a lot of his videos that he's done over the last 3 or 4 months have now disappeared all of a sudden. And he said he's taking a break. Now, let me be clear on this. I know there are people who are saying that Paul Thorpe is being a coward, but I personally think that's not the case. I think Paul has every right to have a break, because he has busted his balls trying to make sure he's doing the best interests of this country, to wish for peaceful resolution, for trying to calm the streets, for calling the people in the supposed far right, by the media, to not go out of their way to attack the police, not to go out and riot, not to inflame in massive fucking tensions, much akin to Tommy Robinson. He has been one of the few people who has again been calling for peace. But I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts, and yes, I know there are going to be people who comment how many of those I've had. Joke's on you, 0, I don't eat them. Anyway, the point is, he's probably not faced threats all of his life, like Tommy Robinson has, and understandably, he has family he needs to look after. I am also one of these kinds of people who has a family, and back in my days when I still lived with my mother, I could understand why she kicked my ass out the house, because I had effectively endangered her, and that's something I will have to live with, and I do apologise for it. But this isn't about me. This is about Paul Thorpe and the left wing. So at the end of the day, the way I look at Paul Thorpe is he has every right to have a break. I've taken breaks many times, especially considering, as I've said, that man has bent over backwards and forwards to try and give us these rallies, give us these inspirational speeches, and most importantly, in dark times like this, call for peace. Now that I've got that little piece of Paul Thorpe out of my system, oh, and by the way, one last thing. I don't think he's taken people's money and run, far from it. And frankly, he didn't have to go out of his way to tell us what he's planning to do right now, which is take his family on holiday and take a break from the whole thing. He didn't have to do that. He's done it because he's a gentleman and he's a man who clearly cares about the British people. Right, now it's done. So, back to the left wing. Ricky Jones, actively calling for the slitting of throats of right-wingers. I want you to bear this in mind, because now I have counted, because I've been looking up the articles during my lunch break and getting a sneaky peek here and there. I have been looking up the stories of people protesting, and I now count at least 4 people who have been arrested, charged, and found guilty, or some of them have pled guilty to these protests. One of these people, 69-year-old, had, I believe it was a kosh, one of those small little truncheon-like things, much akin to the police, that he carried, he claims, in self-defense. Realistically, I can't condone what he's done, because if you're having to carry weapons, what the fuck are you doing there in the first place? I accept that there is, perhaps, to play devil's advocate here, maybe you do need something to defend yourself, but I wouldn't be using a damn weapon to defend myself. Bring a book, if anything. Bring the fucking Bible, if anything. Somebody does try to attack you with a machete, at least you could try and use the book to, I don't know, bat away the machete or what have you while you try to get away. Because at the end of the day, if you go using a weapon, you're giving the media what they want, which is effectively, they want to tar us all with the same brush. That brush, as you all well know, is of course far right. There was a gay couple as well, who have been charged with violent disorder. These 3 people have been given about 2 to 3 years prison time for their deeds. But what I find particularly aggravating about all of this is how the Metro, who they were reporting on this, with the gay couple, they were absolutely hounding them, absolutely relentlessly attacking them. Like, when they've said they've pled guilty, okay, they're kind of dead to rights here, but it doesn't change the fact that these media shills went out of their way to basically stick the cameras in their faces and to say, how do you feel about your verdict? Can you justify your actions? Are you happy with what you've done? And blah, blah, blah. Sounds a bit like what Tommy Robinson did with the Muller Rices that went around in Leeds and groomed a whole bunch of kids. Why is it they haven't been arrested? Please explain. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. I mean, if they went after Tommy Robinson after the case in that trial was over and they basically were going for their sentencing, and everything Tommy Robinson said in Leeds in 2018 was actually already in the public domain and therefore not in the realms of contempt of court, surely it stands to reason now that the Metro should face the same persecution as Tommy Robinson did. Surely, using their logic, these people from the Metro, they should be facing prosecution now, because they sent Tommy Robinson to prison. Hell, he had to spend 5 months or whatever it was in prison. Some of the time spent in HMP Hull, and the rest of it in the mostly Muslim populated HMP Onley, where he ended up coming out as a stick figure after he couldn't eat because he was worried the Muslims had poisoned his food, and worse still, the Muslims were throwing literal shit into his cell, which of course the mainstream media are going to omit from telling you. I can't remember the 4th person off the top of my head. I think they were a welder and they actually set bins on fire, if I recall correctly. And this person was also sentenced to, I think it was like 2 years and 3 months in prison. Certainly no more than 3 years. But it's funny how there's 4 arrests on people considered far right. How many are there on the Muslim side? How many are there on the left-wing side? Because let's face it, a lot of the Mullah Rices, the hardline Mullah Rices that are going out there waving swords, machetes, knives and bats, they should be arrested. But of course the police decided, oh, they can police themselves. Yes, I'm totally sure that an Islamic community full of their own people are totally going to police what they're doing. Sure. I'm going to have to punish hoodlums for constantly getting in the way. Anyway, they won't fucking tell us that this is really 2-tier policing. They won't tell us that the police basically left these Islamic scumbags to do whatever the fuck they want, while they constantly go after British patriots and concerned parents who are worried about their kids and the safety of this country, which Keir the traitor Starmer should be prioritising, but instead wants to fuck off to holiday to basically enjoy himself, while loads of our kids are put at risk. And while I accept that Ricky Jones has been suspended from the Labour Party, I expect full charges pressed against that fucker, because he is inciting violence. He is inciting hatred towards right-wingers. Surely, if our media, our government and our police are balanced in their way of handling things, they will take Ricky Jones, place him in a cell, bring him to court, press charges against him for inciting hatred, and surely he should be facing 3 years in prison, going by their logic. But let's face it, I suspect they will say nothing about this. I suspect they will blow this all off and they will basically give him a slap on the wrist, which again the mainstream media are not going to want to tell you. We have to talk one more time, but let me get a little prick. Anyway, they are probably just going to brush this all off. That's the way I slice it. Whichever way you slice it, it stinks of hypocrisy to me. I hope, though, that they are going to come down hard on Ricky Jones, because they need to. Prove us wrong. Prove to us there's no 2-tier policing, 2-tier lawfare, 2-tier media, and 2-tier Keir the traitor Starmer. I want to see it for myself, but obviously we haven't seen jack shit lately. I do hope that they're going to see this and actually realise the British people are sick and tired of only seeing one side of the story. They are sick and tired of seeing people who are tarred with that same brush, who are called far right, being persecuted for being concerned about the kids. And I accept some of these nutters, and I say that because I'm talking about the minority of people on the right wing who are the violent ones, who are the ones going out looting, who are the ones stoking the flames. I do accept those people need to be condemned, and I do. I condemn them. I condemn their actions of violence and all that shit. I will say, however, I completely understand the feelings they have, because they're sick of not being listened to by treacherous governments. The way I look at it is a lot of these people on the right are concerned parents and patriots. There are a small minority of people who cause the violence, who do need to be called out, just like the Islamic community needs to call out their extremists. However, it's surprising that the imam who did speak out about this, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, never mentioned anything about the grooming gangs, which is a shame, because he would have scored some big points for that. But I want to see the Labour politicians condemn Ricky Jones for calling for this for right-wingers. I want Amnesty UK to be called out for being alongside the man who wished this to right-wingers. But I suspect they won't face any action, and they won't do a damn thing. And let's be clear here, whether or not you like Tommy Robinson, or Maya Toosey, or Paul Thorpe, or Richard Inman, just to name a few, whether you like them or not, surely there should be some common sense and fucking human decency to not wish death or violence or incite it on the other side. Maybe I'm just too much of a goody-goody two-shoes to believe that there should be violence, though. I don't know. But last time I checked, I believe it was against the law to do that shit, because even people like Piers the Snake Morgan wants to go out of their way and libelously slander people like Tommy Robinson. I put this challenge to you, Piers Morgan. Since you're so eager to condemn Tommy Robinson, since you're so eager to follow whatever narrative benefits you, I want to see you, Piers Morgan, fucking put your money where your mouth is. Have Tommy Robinson on your uncensored program and let him be able to defend himself against your libelous statements against him. I suspect you don't have the balls to, whether it's up here or down there, or in my case, both. And I also put this question to you, Piers Morgan, directly. Are you going to condemn that Labour MP who has called for this for right-wingers? Are you going to call it out? Or are you just going to push that under the rug while continuing to condemn the far right for inciting violence, while the mainstream media and left-wing NPCs in the Labour Party, no less, like James Mathewson, are saying that people like Alex Phillips from Talk TV are stoking the flames of fascism and inciting these riots, who she had every right to take out the trash at that point by kicking him off the show? Or what about Nigel Farage, who they condemn, who never incited these protests? And as much as I hate him right now for his basically this slander to Tommy, for saying that the Tommy Robinsons are inciting the protests, no, they aren't. But I do accept that he's also not the person who's inciting these protests, and it would be libelous to say it about him. The real people who are stoking these flames, fanning the flames, and pouring petrol cans over this fire are Keir the Traitor Starmer, the idiots in the MDL, because there is no EDL, that disbanded 10 years ago, 11 actually, but there is the MDL, where it's young community waving around the machetes, basically wanting to attack people. They attacked a pub goer in Birmingham. He's now got a lacerated liver. Why isn't the mainstream media talking about it? I wonder. I bet they'd talk about it if it was a load of white people going after a Muslim pub goer, if they're even allowed to. But my point is, if we flip the script here, this would be worldwide news. This would be breaking news. This would be on every fucking paper and every media outlet. And I know there are going to be people who are going to tell me to stop being a potty mouth, but at the end of the day, clearly 600 people appreciate me, whether it's for my bluntness, for the strong language, or whatever. Or maybe it's just because I speak the bloody truth and I'm not afraid to. Maybe that's what it is. The way I look at it, I don't sugarcoat anything, I don't mince my words, and as I said before, I will say again, I will do my damnedest not to bullshit you. Tell that to the mainstream media, because the media don't have the bollocks to do that, and they never will. They'll happily cover the right-wing protests when they happen. They will happily cover the protests by concerned patriots and parents, and then label them all as far right when violence breaks out from the small minority of people, when most of the people who are up there are saying, rule Britannia, protect the children, save the children. Whereas we've got people in the left wing, we have Islamic scumbags shouting the Alan Snack Bar phrase, and they are calling for violence. They are throwing up the pro-plasticine flag, the flag which basically supports Hamas and the genocide of Jews, which the media always seem to omit. And they are the ones who are going out of their way to carry weapons, and they're not being prosecuted by the police for carrying them. Do you think we would be able to get away with carrying machetes? I mean, clearly that man wasn't getting away with carrying that kosh that he had. But the way I slice it, We need balanced media, we need balanced police, we need balanced governing, because we don't have that right now. Clearly what we have is two-tier lawfare being waged, this war against the supposed far right, when most of us, we're just concerned for the kids. The only way the left wing is concerned with the kids is basically when they can't cover it up anymore. Like, the media and the police were all too eager to cover up the grooming gangs from the Islamic community when they were going out of their way to violate our women and children. The media didn't want to talk about it. It's only when Tommy Robinson brought it up, they started talking about it, because they knew the jig was up. Otherwise, they'd be happy for people like Naz Shah to tell us to shut up for the sake of diversity. Where's the media coverage for that? Where's the balance? There'll never be balance with this media and this government. Keir the traitor Starmer, as said, is stoking the flames right now, and he wants to fuck off to another country while this country burns. Why won't the media call Keir the traitor Starmer out on this? Why is it they're more interested in labelling patriots and parents as far right, ignoring the Islamic community who even got around to Sky Reporter? They don't want to report the fact that she was basically threatened by these people wielding machetes and knives. Why is that? You can't keep focusing on one side of the story. There needs to be two sides to every argument. That's the cold bitter truth. But you're more interested in pushing your narrative. BBC, Sly News, Channel 4, and all the other fucking media outlets. Whichever way you look at it, thank you. Whichever way you look at it, the media need to be held to account. Their treachery and deceit will not be forgotten. Certainly not Keir the traitor Starmer. Keir the traitor Starmer needs to be held on treason charges. The king needs to bring back the treason law, the traitor law that Tony the war criminal Blair rescinded before he went to war in Iraq. You want to persecute the right wing, that's one thing. But make sure you fucking do the same thing to the left. Because at the end of the day, we need balance. We need equilibrium. We need people who understand that you cannot keep this two-tier policing and lawfare up. Because otherwise, what we're left with is anarchy. And there will end up being a violent revolution, which even Ricky Gervais has started mentioning. Which was why I was trying to be careful of which Ricky I was referring to. Anyway, Ricky Gervais has even been saying that I think that he basically thinks there's going to be a revolution in this country. And I don't blame him. People are fed up with this government. They're fed up with the two-tier policing. They're fed up with the... It's not even journalism, the activism from the biased media. That's why there needs to be people like me, people like Tommy Robinson, people like Maya Toosey, people like Richard Inman, people like Paul Thorpe, although he's now going on a break. We need people like him reporting the other side of the news, because we're never going to receive it from the BBC or Sly News or Channel 4. All the other mainstream outlets and rags. But back to the point about the protests, just before I end the video, I want to see some arrests on the left wing and from the Islamic community. Because last time I checked, I thought it was illegal to carry dangerous weapons like swords and machetes or knives. Keir the traitor Starmer spoke about wanting to bring back stop and search. Does that mean he's going to search the Islamic community? I hope he does, because a lot of them, they are just so blatant. I've already mentioned how there was a policeman who even went out of their way to say, please return your weapons to the mosques. No, you should have taken the weapons and confiscated them. You would have done the same to the right wing. God, I really need to open a cold one, don't I? Or, sorry, crack open a cold one. Like, Keir the traitor Starmer needs to be thankful right now that that traitor law is not in. But I recommend everyone do everything they can to tell our government to bring it back, because they need to. Put the law to a vote, because if we leave it to Keir the traitor Starmer, let's face it, he'll never push that through. Why do you think he'd want to push through a law that basically sees him hang from the gallows? Case in point. But at the end of the day, I want to see some arrests done on the other side as well. And I actually want the media to have the balls to put it out there. Because, as I said, we need balance. We need equilibrium. We need justice. The way I look at it, these Islamic extremists have been allowed to get away with too much for far, far, far too long. They have gotten away with this shit longer than I can keep count. Longer than I've been alive, I suspect. Which, of course, the mainstream media are not going to tell us, because they were the ones protecting these fuckers. I want to see Piers Morgan have Tommy Robinson on and put his money where his mouth is. If you really believe in free speech, and if you really believe in your show, and you believe that you can beat Tommy Robinson, because you clearly had Andrew Tate on, and he's not exactly a small figure. He's not exactly a small-time person. He converted to Islam, and he is quite controversial, to put it mildly. So if you're able to have Andrew Tate on, Piers Morgan, let's see you have Tommy Robinson on. Have you got the balls? Or are you going to cower away because you know he's going to kick your fucking ass? Let's face it. That's really the only reason I want to see Tommy Robinson on. I want to see him kick your ass and put you in your place for your libelous, slanderous remarks against him. Just like I want to see the media and the government and Nigel Farage be held to account for their libelous, slanderous remarks about Tommy Robinson and the so-called far right. I want to see it happen, because at the end of the day, they need to be held to account. Notice how I say people from the left and the supposed far right need to be held to account, including those who have gone out and committed violent acts and looting and pillaging and all that shit. They should also face justice, but it should be both sides, not just one side. And of course, as always, we need to name and shame every single traitor that decides to go out of their way to libelously slander us. James O'Brien, chief among them. As much as I hate Nigel Farage, he was completely reprehensible with his remarks against Nigel. Nigel needs to be named and shamed as well for his remarks against Tommy Robinson. We need to hold people like Tom Watkins to account for his Watling, not Watkins. Tom Watling from The Independent. He needs to be held to account for his slander against us. We need to hold every single one of these traitors to account, because that's what they are. Their duty is to serve the British people. In the media, they have one job: report impartially and without bias, based on facts, the news. And Keir the traitor Starmer, his duty is to protect the realm and all of its inhabitants, not just one section of inhabitants, namely Islam. He needs to get off his fucking high horse and actually realise the fucking damage he's done, quite frankly. Because he's not actually making things better with his constant knee-jerk reactions. He's making it worse. He's not going to decrease the amount of riots. He's not going to decrease the intensity of the riots. He's going to make more of them, and they're going to be even worse. It's like if there was people who are complaining they're not getting paid enough, and then you literally say, right, we're taking away all of your pay now. you're going to piss them off even harder. In this case, because you don't seem to give a shit about the children, Keir the traitor Starmer, you are effectively stoking the flames of the supposed far right, who, as I said, I'd reckon 90% of them are just concerned parents and patriots who want a future for their kids. You are aggravating these people to no end doing this shit. But one thing that did come out in our favour is a lot of these so-called planned protests that have been going on as well. I actually forgot to put this in. I said I was going to end the video, but I need to bring this up because it just came to mind now, is that they put out articles saying, looks like the far right have been defeated. Or basically that's the context they're trying to give, because there's now thousands of, well, anti-far right protesters, anti-fascist protesters, counter-right-wing protesters, whatever you want to fucking call them. I call them NPC renter mobs, because let's face it, a lot of these people are too stupid to think for themselves. And I'm not afraid to say that. Like I said, I'm not going to bullshit anyone, or I'll try not to. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And I sure as shit ain't going to mince my words. Same can't be said for the chicken I've got in the kitchen, though. Anyway, I'm not going to mince my words, and I'm going to call this out for exactly what it is. And what I see is blatant two-tier media broadcasting, two-tier policing and lawfare, and a traitor for a Prime Minister who is literally, of all time, the worst Prime Minister and the biggest traitor of our country's history. He has gained that title in weeks, what others have had to work years for. That should tell you how much of a traitor and a scumbag Keir the traitor Starmer is. And as I've said before, I will never stop calling him a traitor. I want it to sink into his head. I hope he's actually watching these videos, and I hope that word is sinking ever deeper like a drill into his fucking head. Because that is unequivocally what he is. How sad is it when people are confronting him on a train? He has to get his little bodyguards to come in and bully their way on a person, basically commit assault on him, because he's afraid of confronting the people he's pissing off. This is the country we live in, folks. But as far as the protests are concerned, they try to go with this narrative of all these people coming out and are defeating the far right, and they are stymieing the flow of hatred and anger from the supposed far right, concerned parents, whatever. Here's the truth, though. People are starting to realise, whether it's through instinct or whether it's through people telling them, like Paul Thorpe, Richard Inman, Maya Toosey, Tommy Robinson, whoever, they're basically finding out that these protests are not actually planned protests. It's actually being proven, I believe, by Maya Toosey right now, if he's been live today, that these fucking things are actually a gaslighting attempt from the government to try and get the Muslim community to be enraged and commit violence and disorder, so that the government can bring in draconian laws that limit our ability to protest. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks. Because, say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. That's what it boils down to, folks. They didn't get the reaction they wanted from the supposed far right. So they're looking to other communities to incite the violence and hatred on, and therefore get the scenes they want, where the police will be there to beat the shit out of them or do the kid gloves approach with the left wing, and then we'll have the media click, 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 put the camera on him, get a mugshot, get him like, and basically push that narrative. Yes, I make a good caveman. Anyway, that's what they're doing. They are using these protests to try and get us effectively silenced. Unequivocal fascism at the very heart of their agenda. This is why I say, metaphorically speaking, and not literally speaking, we need to take out the trash and place it in the dumpster of history, where these traitors rightfully belong. And Keir the traitor Starmer, like I said, you keep this up, maybe you will get what you want, or what you think is what you want. Maybe that is what all of you want in the media and the establishment and the WEF. Maybe you do want a violent revolution. And let's say, for the sakes of argument, it does happen, and all of Tommy Robinson's efforts fail, and Richard Inman's efforts fail, and Maya Toosey, Paul Thorpe, just to name a couple of others. Let's say all their efforts fail for the sakes of argument to prevent violent revolution to break out, and you're able to bring in the army. The thing is, when they look back in history, they're not going to see us as a bunch of far-right football hooligan lockdown protesting fucking thugs. They're not going to look at us like that. They're going to look at us as ordinary people who are fed up of the treachery, deceit, and the constant persecution that they've been facing from people like you, Keir Starmer. They're going to see us as ordinary people who have had enough and decided to take matters into their own hands. Now, let me be absolutely clear on this. I'm never going to advocate for violent revolution. I hate it. I'll condemn it. I condemn the violence. I condemn the riots. I condemn any kind of illegal act. But as I've said, I completely understand if people go down this route, because their tensions and their frustrations are at an all-time high. All because of treacherous media, police and governments over the last 20 to 30 years. While you could accept that the 3 children being killed, God rest their souls, wasn't the thing that basically caused it all to kick off, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Because the tensions have been boiling over these decades. And they're fed up of traitors running this country and driving ordinary people into the ground. I don't think there's going to be a single working class person that is ever going to vote for Labour ever again after the back of Keir the traitor Starmer's 3 atrocious speeches, his draconian attempts to drive out protests, and his attempts to persecute people if they even attempt to put out riot videos, footage of the evidence going on. He wants to persecute people for that. And our media are more interested, as said, in showing one side of the story without the other. And they know what their job is. They just choose not to do it. But let's say you do get what you want, and you do get that revolution, and the army gets brought in, and everything goes to shit. As I said, they're going to see us as people who've had enough. And the army, the vast majority of them, I suspect, will end up turning to our side because they know the wokery and the bullshit you've pushed on them too. Do you really think that the army is going to serve traitors like Keir the traitor Starmer? Or our mainstream media? Or other treacherous politicians like Yvette Cooper or Jess Phillips? Of course they're not. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are part of the problem. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go out of my way to advocate that they should die, because I have a moral compass here. Sometimes it goes a little wonky, but it always ends up pointing north. That's the way I look at it. And to anyone who wants to criticise my figure, as I said before and will say again, I may be 19 stone, but this is fucking 19 stone of truth right here. You are not going to stop the ordinary people from rising up against the treacherous establishment. When tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty. When you make peaceful resolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. And what Keir is doing, Keir the traitor Starmer, is he is hell-bent on getting this revolution. But like a powder keg, if he gets this revolution, it's all going to blow up right in his face. And he is not going to be able to recover from it. He will be named in history as the worst Prime Minister of our history, even thousands of years to come, because he incited these riots. He incited this violence. He incited this resistance that's going on right now. As I said, powder keg. He's trying to light the fuse, hoping it all goes up and it's not going to blow up in his face. Well, you fuck around, Keir the traitor Starmer, and soon enough, you will find out.